extremely manipulated and not like news photos or anything. It's based in the idea of documenting the world to some extent. So I have gone to these various facilities. I go to these various places and respond to definitely the communities, the people who work there. That becomes part of the piece. And if they're subjects, that is a collaboration, obviously. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Judy and I work at the Biennial as well.
Hang on a minute. We're a bit short-staffed today, Nancy, so we've been running around.
Okay. Do you want me?
Can you hear me now? Hi, I'm Judy. I also work at the Biennial. And hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I've just got a question. Would you describe yourself more of a photographer or filmmaker with your work?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because when people try to describe my work, they often don't know what to say. So I'm definitely a photographer, because all of the video pieces and the moving image pieces that I make are built from still images. They're built in kind of an old, obsolete process of animation, so that they look kind of funky, like the beginnings of cinema. There was a point where photography and cinema, there was this, at the very beginnings of both mediums, there's an interesting overlap. But I think it's all based, for me, in the still image and in questions surrounding the still image.
The work that I've seen has been very, very, very beautiful, or I found it very beautiful in the way that you make it. And we will share the images that we have here with the people that are here. But I'm just wondering, are you making a brand new piece of work for Liverpool Biennial?
Yes, I am. I just confirmed dates with Monica, so it's a cause for celebration, because my proposal was contingent on the getting access to the Jaguar facilities. It's in Halewood, and also getting permission to collaborate with one of the people that work there. And so I just got news that they said yes. So I don't know what I would have done if they hadn't said yes, because I really want to work with the Jaguar people too. What was the question? What's that?
I was just asking if you're making a new piece of work for the Biennial. So yes, you've answered that.
The whole process is that they asked me to do a proposal, and I came to Liverpool and did some research and decided that, I made a proposal to make this sort of hybrid video photograph piece that is sort of a continuation of a long project that I've been working on called Workers, and that the documentation inside the Jaguar facilities, inside their factory, would be the specific piece that would relate to Liverpool.
Okay, thank you.
So can you tell me when you're going to arrive in Liverpool, and if you're excited to get working on? Are you doing a piece of work that links writing, photography, and film?
I'm coming to shoot on the 20th, the 19th, and the 20th, and I'm very excited to start. I'm a little nervous about certain technical aspects, because I want to document and manipulate the commute of one worker from home to work, and do it in such a way that it looks like this very famous kind of sexy, very romantic film of the 1960s. But for this, I have to put a camera outside the car. And I really don't want to lose my camera. So I'm trying to figure out how to mount it on the front of the car without having to buy kind of Hollywood-style equipment. But I'll have to figure something out along those lines, but I'm trying to be a little bit more creative with how I attach the camera to the car. I know this is completely out of context. You guys probably don't know what I'm talking about at all, but yes, I am excited to come back. I hope that I come with a good solution for that one shot. Everything else, I'm completely excited and open and really interested in coming to the city again. But that one thing is like a little, you know, I'm kind of obsessed about solving this before I come.
Fran, can you explain, do you know what Nancy means?
Well, I know a little bit about Nancy's proposal. Nancy is working with the Open Eye Gallery, who's one of the host venues for this year's festival, as they have been with all of them. And Nancy is going, as she's just explained, is planning to work with somebody who works at the Jaguar factory out in Halewood. Oh, was that a cat? Oh.
Yeah.
And part of that work is for Nancy to work with one worker, and film their commute to work. And so I think Nancy's talking about filming that in a particular style, and she does have lots of filmic references within her work in this proposal as well, and obviously capturing that style and creating some sort of scaffold to hold the camera to get that image right. But maybe Jaguar Factory could knock something up with all their steelworks, and maybe Jaguar Factory could help you in working that one out.
Yeah, they probably could, but I don't want it to look like a car commercial, you know? I want it to look like a really funky, very low, almost on the pavement. Wow. And I'm not sure anybody's willing to risk their camera except for me to do this. It's one thing to propose these ideas and to think about them, and it's another thing when you get to the point where you have to figure out how to do them. But that's part of the fun, too.
Yeah, I'm sure it will look fantastic, and it'll be really interesting to see how it all works out as well.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to do the actual commute, because I'm going to try to talk the guy into to driving very, very fast, like speeding. So. Okay,
I'm sure that won't take too much persuading, especially if he's got an X-type Jaguar.
Well, that's the point. I don't think many people who work at the factories drive Jaguars. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. That's something I'll find out.
Yeah, fantastic. Do Bill or John have any more questions for Nancy about this, as it's based in Halewood as well, or the historical significance of that?
The thing that I wanted to know was, how did you begin? When did it first strike you that this was an appropriate area for artwork, if you like?
Well, when I was given the idea that they wanted me to make a proposal for Liverpool, and I wasn't quite sure where to begin. I hadn't visited Liverpool yet. I was thinking about something that, honestly, I've been wanting to do for a long time and wondering whether Liverpool might be relevant for it. When I did some research and found out that they still have a Jaguar facility very close to Liverpool, it seemed an almost perfect opportunity, almost magical coincidence, because it is an idea that I've been thinking about, and it was never quite, appropriate. It's also very appropriate because it's commenting on this film that was made in 1968 called British Sounds. And it's going to be very different from that movie, but it's going to make reference to that as well. So it all these pieces sort of came together with an amazing amount of luck for me.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much.
No, it's an entirely different factory than when I worked there. It used to be Ford's when I worked there.
Yeah, they just sold it to Tata. So you worked at the Jag factory?
When it used to be Ford's, I worked there many years ago.
What did you do?
I was on the production line. I was part
Oh,
of
really?
Yeah. All the faulty cars I used to pull off the line.
So, maybe you could give me some insight. Did you like working there? Or
No.
Was it a good job?
It's the only job.
Bad.
It was the only job I've ever had where I worked inside. I've always worked outside, and I just couldn't hack it.
How long did you work for Jaguar or Ford or?
For 2 years, and
Oh yeah.
it's the only time I ever argued with my wife is when I worked in Ford's. I've never argued before. Or after.
Oh really?
We've been married 56 years, so I mean.
Hello.
So what was so terrible that you had like marital arguments over? It was really bad job then.
Just when I'd come home, she'd say, "Oh, it's been a lovely day." And how the hell did I know it was been a lovely day? I've been stuck in a factory all day and there no windows and nothing, and I just get upset.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Factory work's no good to me.
I worked there as well for about a year last year, and all I was doing all day was picking screws up, and it just drove me nuts. And I was used to painting and stuff like that, and I was like doing it to give me money so I could carry on doing my paintings and that. But
right.
And in the end, it was just like that, picking screws up, and I just walked out. It drives you nuts. But you turn yellow. Everyone, you can tell if people work there because they go like a yellow colour.
It doesn't take. I've never worked in a factory, but it doesn't take a lot of imagination to think maybe it's not the most ideal kind of job, and that's why I want to get one guy, and hopefully let him at least one worker, bring them out of the factory and let them like drive a Jaguar around really fast. Did you? It's also because I think the idea of labor and workers thinking about how things are changing so fast. I mean, Ford just sold Jag to Tata. It's all pretty unsettling, I think, probably for the people who work there now. If they decide to change the location of where that factory is, which is following kind of a pattern. I hope that they don't, but it's. I think maybe people might be worried about that. It's like, sort of unsettling.
The actual location of where Ford's used to, like before it become Ford's and like they sold the land off to America to build the Ford's factory, it used to be like the main part of Aylwood as well. And before Ford's was built, there was like a Norman, like 1,000-year-old mansion that was on there, but they pulled that down to build Ford's. But
Did they really?
Yeah, it was called. It was like Aylwood is actually older than Liverpool. No, the place. So like the location that you've chose has got quite a lot of historical relevance to it as well. Like, so it's a good choice, like to choose the Jaguar factory.
Yeah, it's also something. Yeah, I mean, thank you for reminding me about that history. And I didn't know they tore down an old edifice, like a mansion.
Yeah, the Old Hut, it was called. The Old Hut. It was like but the road's still there, like, and but there's quite a lot of old buildings in Aylwood that like is still standing, like, so it wasn't really all that much of a loss. But after, when they pulled it down, English Heritage was started up, or something like that, was to protect all the old buildings and like that were in danger of getting pulled down or whatever. So like a good thing come from it, you know. It was like sort of English Heritage started up through it, so it was quite a good move as well as a bad move.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's also this idea that the Jaguar represents something British as well, even though it's been sold a million times. So it's really interesting. I mean, it's great that you guys can give me some insight before I come about what it's like to work there.
Yeah. It's like every job, you get a bit fed up with it, don't you? But I think it's when you're working in a factory, you get a bit fed up quicker.
Yeah. But, it's funny because I don't know what the statistics are, whether the Jaguar employs a significant amount of people in Halewood anymore. Do you know if that's... I've got to find out all these numbers before I come. But all I get, you know, like right now, I'm preparing myself because as soon as you arrive to work in a place like this, they have their PR people immediately there telling you all these wonderful facts about their facilities, and it's, you have to wait and wait and wait till you get to talk to people who really work there to find out what it's like.
Yeah. There's a few companies that work there. There's one called Vistion, Mayerplas, and what's the other one? The Johnsons, and they all do separate parts. But and then like these others, like the Jaguar plants is like just like an assembly line now, like. Yeah. But years ago, they used to build all kinds. They used to have like moulding and all that going on in there, and they used to do everything in the factory itself. But nowadays, it's sort of they build Land Rovers as well in there, like they do. Land Rovers as well as Jags. Like. I
want to have one shot of the assembly line of a Jaguar. Hopefully, model one of the super sports cars, like that. One of the most happy cars. I hope I don't end up following the assembly of some like family sedan, because that's not the idea that people have, you know, still that sustains in people's minds about Jaguar and like the best of what that Jaguar is identified with.
It sounds like you got a Jaguar in the back as well, eh? That little meow. Have you got a Jaguar there?
No, it's I bring him into the frame if I can find him. I don't know where he is. If he comes by, I'll bring him into the frame.
Please.
He's not exactly a Jaguar.
Fantastic.
You'd like to ask Nancy?
Hi, Nancy. When I was looking at the campus piece with Halewood U3A, I think the sorts of questions we ended up asking ourselves was about to what extent, and we've had some answers today from people who've worked in Fords as it was, to what extent our working and living environment influences how we think, either in a negative way or even in a positive way. That you were talking about brutalist architecture on new campuses, and whether you think that influences how students now think.
Absolutely, architecture is an important. I mean, literally, people have to live in it and walk by it, and it becomes part of the environment, not just for students, because they're not all ivory tower campuses separated from a city. But certainly, when you have to work and live in those buildings, it's pretty punishing. I mean, it's all symbolic. Oh, I'm getting a lot of reverb. But for example, a couple of the buildings that I shot and which are prominent in the series, they affected the whole community, not just the students and the faculty. They started a lot of sort of hostility and action that was taken against the buildings themselves. Like, one of the buildings was shot at by people who lived in New Haven, which is not a very affluent community. When it's not the people, there's the Yale community, and then there's people who live in New Haven, and people actually shot at this building, and it symbolized for the community everything that was wrong with the institution at that point, how it's sort of this impossible fortress, the bastion, just entrenched in its own conservative desire not to change, not to adapt. And so that's a very long-winded answer to your question, but absolutely it's, but I choose to work with architecture so often because it's so incredibly resonant. It's so symbolic of all the issues that surround it, not just the buildings or the aesthetics of the buildings, but the social issues that surrounded when it was built and how it was conceived.
I know John in particular was saying that the artists do have the ability, and again, perhaps particularly writers, because we're working from inside our own heads to transcend the place in which we're working. Do you want to elaborate on that, John?
Yes, it seemed quite obvious that everybody is affected by their environs, and that if that is not correct for uplift and looking upwards, then of course they're going to be depressed. And the one sort of people who aren't affected in that way to the same extent are artistic people, because they can go outside of their environment with their imagination. So we were happy to be writers because we realized that we could put it beside us, away from us, wherever we were, and become engrossed in the work, which doesn't lead to depression always, and is often uplifting. But looking at the other end of the scale, one sees quite clearly why the big houses, the country houses, the landed estates employed Adam to landscape, and they lived in a park of trees and greenery, and there was always water, because water is very beneficial to the human mind. A lake, a stream, a river, and that's the sort of thing that we should encourage, I'm quite sure. If we were able to go back to nature in that way and live amongst the greenery, in the trees, by the water, then we would all be much better people, I'm sure. I don't know, you've got a lot of land in Canada, you can get away from those nasty places. And there's lots of it.
That's true. Sorry?
Go on. There's lots of it there in Canada.
It's true that there's lots of, at Vancouver especially, where I'm from, is incredibly beautiful, but I've lived in New York for 15 years, so I've experienced both sides of the equation. I don't think there's even as many parks in New York as there are, or that I experienced in Liverpool. It's quite barren here. Right.
Well, thank you very much.
We've just got a couple of minutes left, Nancy, so I wondered if anyone would like to ask Nancy anything else, or whether they'd like to ask each other anything. Nancy, would you like to ask us anything? Actually, we've got Dolly who would like to ask me.
I want to ask you everything. I'm especially curious about... Oh, sorry. Did someone want to speak?
No. Oh, when, I'm listening to the capital of culture and everything that's happening to our town. We've had the culture from my days, now younger days, or Irish or Welsh. We had our culture, you know. But sometimes I get disappointed because I'm going back for the very first time in the 60s. After the war, there were many, many houses, you know, back to back, demolished, you know, with the war and that. As I was in the war myself, I ran away from the Blitz, thinking I was running away somewhere, but I ended up in the army. But never mind, that was another experience which helped me today to do what I'm doing. So I go by communities now. You know, filmmakers, we had one, was born and reared, I don't know if you've heard of it, The Garden of Stone, Jared Gardens. And he said, he was telling me, it was 18 months trying to make this film, of where he was born to the day now, the different type of housing. And it brought back a lot of memories, because in them days there was no houses. I'm talking about the Vauxhall and the Scotland Road area. They were all dwellings, 5 high. No matter what age you were, you had to climb up to 5 lots of stairs. There was no lifts. But when we were all moved in the 60s, with the first generation, and that's when 1990, I think, or 91, the HAC came along, the Housing Action Trust. And I must really agree, it was the first initiative, 5,000 people to be rehoused across the city. 67 blocks and 35 sites, which got people at my age group that had never been out to meetings or things like that with the council, but got us all together, 2 from each block, and joined like a tenants association, which we're calling out, still in it, the tenants bin.
Doll, let me put this into context for Nancy, because she's Nancy. Dolly's from Tenants Bin, and we all work together in the Tenants Bin project. And Dolly's talking about how Tenants Bin began. So it was to do with housing in those days. Obviously, as you know, Liverpool's quite densely packed with housing, and there was high-rise blocks of flats, 68 of them in those days. Now there's only 11. So it's very much about the way environment affects people and their living conditions. So Dolly's just saying that Tenants Bin was there to give people a voice.
I do believe that my voice is mostly for the elderly people are being brought out into the community to speak up for themselves, what they never had before. And that was getting people together from where they lived, having a say. That was the first ever, to my knowledge. From there, I knew about the housing and repairs and all that. We never had anything like that. But it was the elderly people I'm concerned in that got involved. I think it was 68% out of blocks that had a say in where they wanted to live, whether they wanted to stay in the block or whether they wanted to have housing, you know. But the war land was very expensive, and of course there was different developers coming along, and you know, you just had to have like a vote to say where you wanted to live. But that's my knowledge today. I feel myself that the future generation should be looking at their third age.
Yeah. Well, that's what
you know,
the University
I really
of Third Age is all
Not
about.
Not just about housing, about the way of life in the community itself.
Yeah.
You know.
We've only got a couple of minutes actually, Doll. So when Nancy comes over, perhaps we could all get together, have a cup of tea and meet up. Is there anything you'd like to say, Nancy, before we finish the show?
Of course, I'd love to get together when I come. How long did you live in that community for?
How long did you live there for, Doll? Nancy?
Did I live where?
In the tower blocks.
In the 38 years. I loved this.
So maybe when you come over, we can show you some of the existing tower blocks.
Yeah.
I would love
only 11
to.
of them left.
That's lovely.
Okay. I would love to.
Well, that's fantastic.
And it's a very famous situation that you're describing. I'd love to talk about it because I've seen a lot of photographs of those housing blocks, and I'd love to see them today, the ones that remain.
Okay, well, we'll do that.
We're going to do that.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
And thanks to the University of Third Age into Windows. Is there anything you'd like to say, Franny?
For being with us today, and I hope you've had your breakfast, or if not, you can go and have your breakfast and feed the
It's
cat.
very early in the morning when Nancy.
But yes, thank you very much, Nancy, and look forward to seeing you again when you're back in Liverpool. And thank you, Windows, thank you, Dave and Lisa, and thank you, John and Bill, as well, for coming. Really good to see you all.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I hope to meet you guys soon.
Yeah, definitely. See you soon, Nancy. Bye.
Okay.